Hey guys, welcome back, and I am pleased to be welcomed once again by the mock draft guy. He is here to do another mock draft. Welcome back. Before we get into it, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you are new. Also, be sure to check out his channels. I'll be sure to leave his links and everything down in the description below. If you like weekly mock drafts, player profiles, things of that sort, go check him out. Today, he will have the odds. I will have the evens. Is there anything you want to say before we get into it?
Happy to be back. It's been too long.
Definitely has. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. You have the number 1 overall pick with the Houston Texans.
Yeah, it's pretty simple for me. I know we could go back and forth on, Jalen Carter or Will Anderson Jr. here at number 1, but it's got to be a quarterback, man. The quarterback position has shown nothing for me for the Houston Texans this year to where I could say, yeah, you know what? They could ride with them for another year until Caleb Williams is ready to come out. So I think you got to go after it now. You got to go get a new head coach, got to get a new offensive coordinator, and you got to just start fresh now. So I'm going to go Bryce Young at number 1.
Yeah, I think that's the consensus. There was a lot of back and forth between him and CJ Stroud for a while, but I feel like Bryce Young has kind of separated himself as the QB1 at this point. I agree with that pick. They've had 3 different starting quarterbacks over the last few weeks. It's been an up and down roller coaster, and I think it is time that they get their franchise guy moving forward. I like that pick. Moving on to number 2, the Seattle Seahawks, and I think we're both in agreement here. It's got to be Jalen Carter. The interior of this defensive line for Seattle has been not amazing. They've had not too much production in the pass rush department, and Jalen Carter, I think, is the best player in this entire draft. I know you think he's the best player in this entire draft. Incredible size and speed, and I think he would fit fantastic on the Seattle defense.
Yeah, it's an interesting case. You could make an obvious case for both players because really with the switch to a 3-4, Will Anderson makes a lot of sense as an outside linebacker, but Uchenna Nwosu has been really good this year. Could always use him on the other side. But really in a 3-4, you're not asking too much in terms of statistics for your defensive tackles and your interior defensive ends. But Jalen Carter could be an interior defensive end like Aaron Donald is for the LA Rams. So I like the pick a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense getting that interior pressure. And then I have the 3rd overall pick. I mean, you've given me I've gotten the 2 most easy picks to start this one off. I got to go Will Anderson. It just makes too much sense. Whichever of these 2 amazing defensive prospects lands to the Chicago Bears, they should have Roger Goodell wind sprinting up to the podium to make that pick.
Yeah, I agree with this one again. Another super simple pick. He's a monster, and we know that the Bears, when they've been successful in the past, it has started in that defensive line. I think Will Anderson could bring back that Bears culture that they have been accustomed to having. And I think him and Jalen Carter are the top 2 players, great speed and size at the edge position. And he would be an instant impact player, similar to what Micah Parsons has been for the Cowboys. At number 4, the Detroit Lions, there's a couple of ways you could go. I think they're going to stick with Jared Goff for another year. I think he's been pretty solid for them. And I like how they're playing. I think with this first pick, they've got another one at 15. I think they have to address the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson, who's been fantastic. 7 sacks on the season, 2 interceptions. He's been great, but I think you need that other sidekick to pair him along with. I think that's got to be Myles Murphy here. Not amazing in the run defense, but his pass rush, his arms, he's going to be an immediate impact player once again, and I think he fits so nicely in what Dan Campbell wants to do with that defense. So I think Myles Murphy's the guy here for Detroit.
Yeah, I agree with that pick 100%. I think that it's such an awkward position at number 4 because it's a little bit too high to be addressed in this cornerback class. It's a little bit too high to be addressing the secondary, way too high to take a linebacker. And maybe it's not the number 1 need, but you definitely have to address. I mean, the game of football is won and lost in the trenches. And if you could pair, 22-year-old Aiden Hutchinson with another very young defensive end, that's a great pairing for the next 5 to 10 years that you got right there. And While Miles Murphy at the beginning of the year was struggling a little bit with the run defense, he has gotten better as the year has progressed, which is something that's really, really interesting because that was really the only hole in his game. So to see him play a little bit better there makes him a much, much better prospect. Then I have the Philadelphia Eagles at number 5. And I mean, Howie Roseman has to win Executive of the Year with the way that this team has been playing and the fact that they still have a top 5 pick as it stands right now. But if it was like this and the board fell this way, I got to go with Tyree Wilson here. And I know that might be a surprise to a lot of people, but you know, Tyree Wilson is a guy that's been flying up draft boards basically the whole year. At the beginning when I started, he was really like a fringe first-round pick, maybe more of a second-round guy. Now I see him in the top 5 because of just his outstanding pass rushing ability, his versatility at 6'6", 275. He can line up outside, he can line up on the interior, and he can line up at outside linebacker. I don't think you can ask for much more to add to the Philadelphia Eagles defense, who's really drafting at a surplus at pick number 5.
Yeah, I agree with that pick. His line versatility, obviously, they went out and traded for Robert Quinn, who is a free agent after this year. He could fill that hole immediately. Great size and speed at 6'6", as you mentioned. I think he could be a fantastic piece on this Eagles defense. And him and Jordan Davis on that defensive line together would be problems for the offensive line. This is probably where the draft starts. I think I kind of had an idea on where the first 5 were going to go. Number 6, though, you could go corner here. Obviously, Byron Murphy has been okay, but they definitely need another corner. So Kaylee Ringo on the board makes a lot of sense. But after watching their game last night against the Patriots, to me, I think they have to go offensive tackle here. And I like Paris Johnson here. When Kyler Murray is not protected, he's just going to run around the entire game. That's basically been what he's done this entire season. They have no protection for him. The entire offensive line is basically going to be a free agent. They need some help in that department. I like Paris Johnson the best of all the tackle prospects. And so I think he's the guy they're going to go with here at number 6.
Yeah, if that was my pick, I'd probably go Keely Ringo only because, you know, the secondary is just so god-awful. But I got to agree with you there. I mean, those are obviously 2 of the biggest needs. Paris Johnson at 6 seems a little bit like a stretch. If Ola Fashanu was still in this draft class, I'd say he was probably the better fit. But, you know, you got to draft with what you got. And you can't go, oh, well, you know, maybe he wouldn't be a number 6 overall pick. But, yeah, you know, obviously it's solid. I mean, you're looking at Rodney Hudson, who's probably going to retire after this year. DJ Humphries is not nearly as good as the Pro Bowl season that he had a few years back. Kelvin Beachum is probably going to retire, or he should be shot into the sun after this season. He's been god-awful this year. It's just a disaster in Arizona. There's so many holes. Kyler's not going to be back until probably next October or November. It's going to be some rough sailing for them. But like I said just a couple picks ago, that winning in the NFL starts and ends with line play. So you got to start somewhere. So I like that pick. Then next, I got another easy pick here. It is the Indianapolis Colts at number 7. I'm surprised that you didn't want this one, but we probably would have picked the same exact person. Yeah. So I'm going CJ Stroud. It's about time that the Indianapolis Colts stop this ridiculous carousel of washed veterans as their starting quarterbacks. You start young, you get CJ Stroud, and who knows? You know, CJ Stroud could even strengthen his position in the draft with a good showing in the college football playoffs. So I think it's a no-brainer. It falls right into your lap, honestly.
Absolutely. I love that pick. I would rather Bryce Young. I'm more of a Bryce Young fan, but I'm not going to complain. CJ Stroud, good arm talent. He's a great athlete, can throw all 3 levels, and he would be an immediate upgrade over Matt Ryan just because of the simple fact that he can, you know, move out of the pocket. I think that would be huge. At number 8, we got the Raiders. I think it's Brian Bresee here. Now, he has dealt with injuries, as we've mentioned in the past, but the potential is there, and this Raiders interior defensive line needs help desperately. Max Crosby's been fine. Chandler Jones has been disappointing, and the inside of that line has given them virtually nothing. And I think Brian Bresee would be an immediate starter and would fit this defensive line very well and is a position of need. So I think it makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's a couple different ways that they can go. It really all depends on what happens in the offseason with Derek Carr. Really, I
Yeah,
could see them going quarterback here. I mean, Skoronski is still on the board too. They have massive needs and outside and inside. But I'm gonna beat it. I'm beat it like a dead horse. The interior of the line is not good. So they definitely need to get better on that front.
for sure.
And then I have the Carolina Panthers here next. And oh God, I really struck gold with these first few picks, and it's gonna be Will Levis. It's got to be Carolina gets their consensus #1 quarterback on their board. There have been talks in weeks prior that they love Will Levis more than anyone else. I think it would be highly egregious of them to take him anywhere else other than this pick here, where they are right now. And I think their picks are only going to get worse because they've been playing some really good football.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they might win a couple more games. You might be entering that Anthony Richardson territory at some point there. You never even know. But Will Levis still being on the board is a no-brainer. Sam Darnold, the free agent, even if he plays really, really well down the stretch, can't see him being the starting quarterback next year.
Yeah, and if you look at the schedule for Carolina, they're all winnable games. I think the hardest game in there is a Detroit game, which you wouldn't think would be the toughest game, but Detroit's playing fantastic. All are winnable games, and their division is horrible. There is a real shot that they could end up winning the NFC South and then picking at number 20. Or I guess it'd be 18, but we'll see what ends up happening. I like the pick for where it's at now. I like Will Levis. I know you're not the biggest fan of him, but we'll see what ends up happening there. At number 10, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is a tough pick. I think they have to go defense here. Defensive line or edge is probably the two big needs for them. Now, you could argue they could go running back with Bijan Robinson. Cordero Patterson's been in and out of the lineup, and they've got Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier playing. You could also maybe go corner on the outside of A.J. Terrell, but I'm going to go with probably a bit high here, but I'm going to go with Isaiah Foskey. I think he's the best player on the board for what the Falcons need. They need edge rush. Grady Jarrett's getting a little bit older, and he's more of an interior guy. I think someone on the outside would fit really nicely. So I'm going to go with Foskey here.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting pick. It might be a reach to some people. It's really not. Foskey's a great player. Fits the 3-4 defensive end option a lot better than really everyone else that's left. You could argue that Jared Verse also has a similar body type, but I think that Foskey's a way better player than Jared Verse at this point. There's such an interesting case, the Atlanta Falcons, because you have good talent on the inside with Grady Jarrett, but he's just being double teamed every play. They got decent production so far this year, not great production from their outside linebackers, Arnold Ebiketie. You're thinking of D'Angelo Malone as well, some other guys. But, yeah, they really need to address that defensive line, definitely. You get the Jacksonville Jaguars here at pick number 11. With the way that the board is falling, I love Quentin Johnston, but I think they really need some help in the secondary or on the offensive line. I think that Shaquem Griffith is a cut candidate this year. They're paying him, I think it's $13 or $14 million. He's been horrible when he's healthy this year. They could cut him and save about $10 million. I think they do that there, and I think they go and they get Keely Ringo with this pick.
Yeah, I love this pick. Keely Ringo is one of my favorite prospects. Just great size at the cornerback position, and it is a massive need for Jacksonville. I think this defense is pretty solid. The pass rush is good. The secondary has some holes. They took C.J. Henderson back in 2020. He didn't pan out at all. I think they definitely need to go get a corner, and I like Keely Ringo. I think he is the best corner in this draft. You just talked about Quentin Johnston. I think he's got to be the pick here for the Texans. They need a receiver to pair with Bryce Young. And I think Quentin Johnston is my wide receiver 1 at this point. It took me a while to come around, finally came around. His size and speed, he's 6'3", and plays like a...
Yeah, 6'4", 215. Yeah.
Yeah, and he plays like a slot receiver. He's huge. He's got great speed, great hands. I think he is the perfect receiver to pair for a young quarterback because he can catch virtually anything you throw at him. And pairing him with Brandon Cooks, who knows if he'll be there next year, that could be a nice duo. But I think they definitely need another weapon on that offense, and Quentin Johnston's the guy here.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. It makes too much sense, especially with a new franchise-type quarterback and Bryce Young with the first pick. Got to pair him with someone that he can grow and he can build chemistry with. You get the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 13. A lot of different ways that they can go here. I like Joey Porter Jr. a lot here. But the fact of the matter is their offensive line is pretty awful. And it's pretty awful in basically every position other than James Daniels. So I'm going to go with Peter Skoronski here. The reason why I'm going to go with Skoronski is a guy could still play tackle at the next level, but he could also play on the interior as well. So I love line versatility. It's a big factor for me in picks. And a guy that you could put everywhere on the offensive line is a guy for me. So I'm going to go with him there.
Yeah, that's the pick I would have made as well because of his versatility on the line. Could play guard, could play tackle, and all of the above are what the Steelers need. So I like that fit a lot for them. We got the Green Bay Packers here at 14. Christian Watson's been playing really well. Maybe that makes them question taking a receiver. I'm not letting that stop me from taking a receiver here. I'm going to still go with Jordan Addison. I think their play styles would be very nice together. Jordan Addison's a guy you want to get the ball to in space, while Christian Watson, I think, is more of a deep threat kind of guy, even though when he has gotten the ball in space, he's been fantastic. But I really like the idea of Addison and Watson, and I think Green Bay desperately needs to add another weapon. You could go offensive line here, but I think it's Jordan Addison here.
Yeah, there's not really a lineman I would consider taking with this pick right here. Really, the only one that would be available that I'd consider taking would be Paris Johnson if he was here at this point in the first round, but he's gone. Moving on to the next pick. I like that pick, by the way. Moving on to the next pick, you got the Detroit Lions here again. And I mean, there's only one player that's on the board that I'd consider taking right now, and that's got to be Joey Porter Jr. The secondary for the Detroit Lions has played well the past few weeks, but they obviously need an upgrade. Putting Joey Porter on the opposite side of Jeff Okudah is something that I'm really a big fan of there, who has finally showed why he was a first-round pick. I think adding another super talented cornerback like Porter would just make a lot of sense.
Yeah, this is the pick as well. Very physical corner, but he's got so much talent, great skill in both man and zone coverage, and pairing him alongside Okudah, the Lions completely rebuild that defense, adding Murphy and Porter, which would be a fantastic draft if they were able to come away with those two guys. I really like that for them. At number 16 here, the Chargers could go a couple of ways. It says wide receiver is the number one need. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a guy we've had going to them for quite a while, both in each of our mocks. And I like the pick. I like Jackson Smith-Njigba a lot. However, I'm going to go with Michael Mayer this time. Reason being, they don't really have that tight end. I like what I've seen from Joshua Palmer. He's really stepped up in the absence of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and I think he could be a solid third receiver. Michael Mayer is an immediate impact player, good blocking tight end to help with Austin Eckler, but he can also be more of a safety valve for Justin Herbert and a red zone target. I think he fits really nicely what they want to do, so I'm going to take Mayer here at 16.
Yeah, I like the pick. That's also the pick that I would make as well. Also, when everyone's healthy, even with Keenan Allen in his advanced age, I feel like there's really no room for JSN.
Yeah.
With those guys under contract and the way that Palmer's been playing as an outside threat as well. I think it would just be, I don't want to say a waste because obviously he'll still produce, but it would be kind of crowded there in the wide receiver room. So that makes the most sense. Gerald Everett being a one-year guy as well. Donald Parham not really showing anything as something other than a blocking tight end. That pick makes a lot of sense. Giving Herbert another weapon is something I'm always a fan of.
Yeah.
Then with Seattle here at 17, interesting spot because a lot of people would argue some cornerback depth, but Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen have been both playing absolutely fantastic football. Really no reason to spend another first-round pick on another cornerback, especially if it's going to be more of a depth piece at this point. But I do love Cam Smith sitting there. I like Christian Gonzalez as well. JSN is enticing because you got two outside threats and you don't really have, a slot receiver for those guys. But I'm going to go with Trenton Simpson here. It just makes too much sense to keep adding to that defense. A lot of guys are free agents. A lot of guys aren't really going to be welcomed back, I feel like, in my opinion. So Trenton Simpson's the pick for me. Adding Trenton Simpson on top of Jordan Brooks, that's a really nice pairing in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, I love this pick as well. Trenton Simpson, best linebacker in this class. That is a big need. I was thinking, what if they decided to go quarterback here and took an Anthony Richardson or
I don't think
I
the
don't
pick
know.
would make much sense right now because this is a team that is on the defensive side, still has many, many holes. Offensively, they basically have hit a home run on every pick that they've made, but I'm really not a big fan of taking a quarterback and just having them sit. Because you
Yeah,
got to think that Geno Smith, the way that he's played, you got to think that Geno Smith is going to be back for at least next year.
yeah.
I'm not a big fan of it. I really, really am not, especially someone like Anthony Richardson, where he could turn out to be the best quarterback from this draft class, or he could be a massive bust. So,
Yeah, for sure. It was just an idea that was kind of running through my head. But moving on to number 18, your team, the New York Jets. I think we would have been in agreement here. Broderick Jones is the guy. Was this the guy you would have taken here?
I would have taken the other Jones. I would have taken Dawad Jones there. But reason being, for me, I mean, either way, you can't really go wrong. But in a difference is that Broderick Jones is a huge man who's only 310 pounds, probably best projects to be a right tackle at the next level. And, unless it's a superstar like Evan Neal, I'm not really a fan of taking right tackles at the next level. I would have taken Dawad Jones because while he is green, he's also 6'8", 360 pounds. I know the Jets haven't had success in the past with drafting massive offensive linemen, but that's just the prototype for Joe Douglas. He's going to go out and he's going to get a massive blindside blocker. And while Broderick Jones could come into his own into his own frame and put on some weight, I would have taken Dawad Jones. But either way, I don't really think you can go wrong because the Jets really need tackle help at both positions. I would have also considered Brian Branch here because of the play of LaMarcus Joyner has been pretty awful this year. I would consider, but I think offensive line is obviously the pick to make here.
Yeah, you said everything I was going to say, so except that you wouldn't have taken Broderick Jones. Moving on to number 19, you've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, pretty easy for me here. I'm going to go Christian Gonzalez. Jamel Dean is a free agent. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't have much money to spend. I think that they're going to have to let him walk, and they're going to have to add to that secondary.
Yep, I agree. They definitely need help in the secondary. Even when those guys have been healthy, I think the secondary has massively underperformed this year. And I think Christian Gonzalez would be a really nice piece. I really don't want to pick for the Titans. I don't really know where to go. This team is so weird. I think receiver is probably the biggest need. So I'm going to take Jackson Smith-Njigba, but they could use some help on the offensive line as well. Taylor Lewan constantly in and out of the lineup. They could use another guard, but they need another weapon so desperately. Derrick Henry can't do everything. Treylon Burks has been really solid when he's played. The problem is he's been so inconsistent in and out of the lineup. I think pairing Treylon Burks, Jackson Smith-Njigba together with, I'm assuming, Malik Willis, who might start next year, I think that's a nice start for him. So I'm going to take Jackson Smith-Njigba here at 20.
Yeah, I actually agree with that pick. That's probably who I would take in that situation too. And speaking of a team that you don't really want to draft for, at this point, you don't really know who to go with the New England Patriots. I mean, linebacker was a big need at the beginning of the year. Everyone's played well. Edge was a big need. Josh Uche has played amazing with Matthew Judon this year as well. On the offensive side of the ball, it's tough to say. I guess, O-line could be a need for them as well. I don't really want to go for a cornerback. Wide receiver is still a big need, and that's where I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Josh Downs here with this pick. I still think that that prototype of a wide receiver would fit absolutely perfectly in a Bill Belichick-led offense, or Matthew Patricia, or Joe Judge, whoever you want to say. But even though he hasn't gotten as much love over the past couple weeks, I think Josh Downs makes the most sense here at that pick.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just a speedster who you can line up on the outside or in the slot, and he would just be able to take the top off of defenses, which is what they need. They need a receiver that can make big plays. So I do love that pick for them. At number 22, this is a very interesting spot for Washington because I love Cam Smith, and I think he would fit this team very nicely. But I do like Anthony Richardson as well. They need a quarterback moving forward. Carson Wentz was a failed experiment. And Taylor Heineke, as great as the story is, he's not your guy moving forward. But I'm going to hold off on the quarterback for now. I'm going to go with the biggest need because this team is winning football games with Taylor Heineke at the starter. I'm going to stick with what's working at least for another year, see how it plays out. and I'm going to take Cam Smith, who I have as my CB2 in this draft. I absolutely love him. SEC corner, locked down Jalen Hyatt and other receivers all season long. I think he would fit very nicely. They need another cornerback, and I think Washington gets a good one here at 22.
Yeah, I agree with that pick there, and I'm glad that you held off because my next pick is Anthony Richardson here with the New York Giants. I think that Anthony Richardson is shockingly similar to the kind of love-hate that Josh Allen got in the pre-draft process. He is a little bit more raw than Josh Allen was, but who was that coach that went out and really, really fine-tuned Josh Allen? That was Brian Daboll, and we could tell just by the way that the offense is being run for the New York Giants this year, that Brian Daboll does not believe that Daniel Jones is his guy moving forward. I think that if they want to bring him back for a year, that's probably cool. And maybe they could duke it out in training camp. But I think that Anthony Richardson is going to be the pet project of Brian Daboll. And I think that he has the potential to be the best quarterback of this class if he puts all the tools together. And I don't think there's a better situation that he could fall in terms of coaching than the New York Giants.
Well, I also really like the Giants' offensive line for him. They would be able to protect him. They need other weapons on this offense, though.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I do love the pick for them. Moving on to number 24, the Denver Broncos here, who shockingly kept it close with the Kansas City Chiefs, weren't able to pull it out. I still think they need offensive line help. I like Jalen Duncan, but I am going to take DeJuan Jones after you talked about him. I think he would fit. Could play left tackle or right tackle, which is they need a tackle. Either one. Garrett Bowles, he's been okay, but has struggled with penalties in his career. I like 24. They need a offensive tackle, so I'm going to go with DeJuan Jones here.
Sorry, I'm chewing on an ice cube. That is a good pick there. I like it. Obviously better suited because of his size as a left tackle, but either way, they need offensive line help. Moving on, they got the Baltimore Ravens here at number 25. You know, another weird team because I feel like they need some offensive line help. They definitely need some secondary help. They need a wide receiver. They need possibly a running back as well. You know, J.K. Dobbins this year has played well when healthy. He's just never healthy. And, Bijan Robinson is still there, and it's really tempting. But I'm going to go with Clark Phillips for the Baltimore Ravens. The reason why is they have decent cornerbacks on the outside. It's just in the slot, it's been tough for them this year. And Clark Phillips is the prototypical slot corner. Can serve a purpose on the outside too, but that's where he's best suited. And he's been phenomenal this year, and he's really improved his draft stock as the season has gone on.
Yeah, I like that pick. Their secondary has been pretty poor. I don't know how they're at number 25. I feel like they should be way lower. They're barely winning the games they're winning, but a win is a win, and this is where they're at. But at number 26, their division rival, the Cincinnati Bengals, are on the clock. Their secondary has been pretty solid this year. They have been playing really well with the pieces they have. The offensive line has improved, but I think that is there's still some holes there. And so I'm going to go with O'Cyrus Torrence here, a guard. The offensive line, as I mentioned, they've played well the last few weeks. They struggled against the Browns a little bit on Sunday, struggled against Myles Garrett, which who doesn't? But I like O'Cyrus Torrence, the best guard in this draft, in my opinion, and would fit really nicely with what Cincinnati wants to do. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, even after the rebuild of the offensive line this past offseason, it's still clear that they do need some help. So I like that pick a lot. I'd probably go secondary. But I like that pick a lot as well. Can't go wrong. With the Cowboys at number 27, I'm going to go with Brian Branch. Donovan Wilson has been good this year. He's also a free agent after this year, and they just need some extra help in the secondary. Brian Branch is a very versatile defensive back who could line up in the slot. He could play safety, and he could even line up as a nickel linebacker. And that's also something that the Dallas Cowboys need, as a lot of their linebackers are free agents this year as well. I think that he's a chess piece that Dan Quinn can move around his defense and would absolutely thrive in Dallas.
Yeah, I like that pick. They need some secondary help. I would even consider maybe going with the corner. There's not really one on this side, but they need someone to pair alongside Trayvon Diggs. The other side of that secondary has struggled. But moving on to number 28, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. It's got to be edge. I think pass rush is the biggest need here. And there's a few guys that are enticing. You've got Jared Verse, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, Nolan Smith, even though he's coming off an injury. I still think he could be a fringe first rounder, but Jared Verse is playing the best right now. I think he is going to get into the first round. You can argue for either of those guys. I like what Jared Verse has been doing. Great size, and pairing him alongside George Karlaftis would be a very nice duo for years to come. So I'm going to go with Jared Verse here.
Yeah, it's a nice pick. I mean, there's so many guys. It's very edge heavy this year. So many guys that are probably first round talents that are probably going to miss out on the first round this year. Yeah. It's just the way that the cookie crumbles. I mean, I probably it's either Verse, BJ Ojolari there, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. You can't go wrong with any of them. Minnesota here, it's going to have to be secondary for me, and I'm going to go with Emmanuel Forbes. Emmanuel Forbes is someone that I've really been high on the last few weeks. Guy who's shot up my draft board. Very, very productive. 14 interceptions in 3 seasons. SEC, you got to love it. He plays against the cream of the crop, and he's got great size as well to play boundary. Minnesota, the cornerback play hasn't been as bad as people might think, but they still give up way too many yards. And Patrick Peterson's actually had like a top 10 cornerback season so far this year, but he also is getting on the older side, and he doesn't have the wheels that he used to. So you're going to have to start planning for the future. And Emmanuel Forbes is a great boundary cornerback option.
Yep, another pick. I do like SEC battle corner, and I think would fit very nicely. They definitely need help in the secondary. Moving on to Buffalo here at number 30. There's 2 ways they could go with this: Bijan Robinson or Antonio Johnson. Obviously, the safeties haven't been healthy all season, so adding another guy to that could really help. But the thought of Bijan Robinson and this offense is just too enticing to pass up on. So I'm going to go with Robinson here. They went out and traded for Nyheim Hines, who has not really produced at all for them. I think he is the best running back far and away in this class, and I'm going to take him here at number 31 or 30, excuse me.
Yeah, it just makes too much sense. And I mean, at this point in the first round, I mean, if Buffalo had like a higher pick in the first round, I would say maybe there's, a Brian Branger and Antonio Johnson would make more sense, but you can't argue with a weapon like Bijan Robinson at number 30. You can't argue with it. You got to go with it. And with the Philadelphia Eagles with the last pick in the first round, kind of to piggyback off that, I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs with the last pick in the first round. I think that, the Philadelphia Eagles are a really tough team to draft for this year because it's really just 2 needs and that's it. So I really don't know what they're going to go with the rest of their picks, but I really feel like defensive end and running back are their 2 areas where I could see them drafting players. But at the same time, with the season that Miles Sanders is having, I could see him back. But at the same time, he's a free agent. I know teams don't like to pay running backs. And, Jahmyr Gibbs is a kind of do-it-all type of guy. He could catch out of the backfield as well. And also, he doesn't have to be the workhorse because they'll still have Kenneth Gainwell under contract as well. So they could split time between those 2 guys. I think it just makes a lot of sense. You just keep adding weapons to this offense, and it's going to become unstoppable. And Jahmyr Gibbs is a real weapon that could be used in, punt returning, kick returning as well. He's just an all-around Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, I like that pick quite a bit. I was going to say the same thing about Miles Sanders. He's played so well this year. I could definitely see him coming back, but we'll see how it goes. But that's how our first round has panned out. As we get closer to the draft, we'll probably do a 2-round mock and different things like that. But this is what we got for round 1. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. But that's going to do it for me in this video. Make sure you guys check out his channel. Subscribe to this channel if you are new. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.